Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Greg, I saw a Michigan fan in the airport as I was wearing my Alabama t-shirt. We had a very nice conversation.
Did he give you a big hug?
Gave me a big smile. We did talk for a while.
Hey, we are everywhere.
Mhm.
Largest alumni base in the world.
Is
Seriously,
that a fact? For real?
that is. Look it
Okay.
up.
Let me Google that.
Mom, is it long?
Yes, Remy. Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Dr. Hunt,
Hi,
how
Dr.
are you?
Hunt. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So we are here for the July meeting of the Equity Advisory Group of the Interstate Bridge. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Roberta Suzette Hunt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm facilitator for today for our group. Closed captions are in English and Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser window, ibr.news/captions. So we encourage EAG members to turn on your video. Please say your name when you begin to speak. And if you experience technical difficulties, please contact staff at 360-329-6744. Public input instructions. There'll be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting today. To submit input after the meeting, email comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG comment in your message. So we'll start with an icebreaker. We'll have our program administrator update. The bulk of our time will be spent on a health analysis presentation and discussion. We'll have public comment and we'll close out. So for our icebreaker, your name and pronouns, your affiliation, and which piece of advice radically altered your life. Now, this question could go a lot of ways. Let's try to be succinct. Which piece of advice radically altered your life? Who would like to begin? Nikki, you look like you could begin.
Okay.
See, I told you.
Hello, my name is Nikki Chen. I go by she, her. And the piece of advice that radically changed my life was trying to please everyone is me trying to control things. I will pass this over to Barbie. Barbie, you think you're ready? Yeah? Okay, let's go.
I'm Barbie Alexander. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the DVE and Workforce Equity Compliance Specialist with the IBR program. And you don't know what you don't know. I guess I always thought that if the facts were there, that you knew, but that's not always the case. So being open for what you know is only a placeholder for the truth. And I would love to call in Chris Reagan.
Thank you. Hi, Chris Regan, Environmental Manager for IBR. Use he, him. My mother was a big fan of Michael Nesmith, who was one of the Monkees, but he did his own musical, and he said the number good is better than number one. And that's important, I think. So I'm going to go to the top corner, Lucy Hammer.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Lucy Hamer. I'm on the IBR equity team. I use she, her pronouns. And I guess best piece of advice I got was from a former supervisor of just run your own race because you are doing your own thing. And I would love to pass to Meg. But it's possible Meg is frozen. So maybe I've changed my mind and I will pass to Vicky.
Hello, everybody. My piece of advice came from a state highway engineer in the state of Oregon when I was the civil rights manager in that department way back. And he said in a session, deal with, when you have a problem or an issue that was contentious, deal with the emotions first and then deal with the facts. And that has served me enormously well. I often was, when I had a problem, I was trying to think of all the facts that would prove my side. And really, if you deal with the emotions first, it usually works out. So I will pass to Greg.
Thank you, Vicki. And by the way, thank you for sending the information along about the Jazz Festival. I will not be in town, but thank you anyway. But Greg Johnson, I'll be our program administrator, he, him. And the best piece of advice I got was from a mentor, an old boss of mine. And he always said, if you're gonna tackle something, make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. And that resonates with me to this day. And it's another way of saying, pick your battles. Are you going to fight everything? Are you going to tilt at every windmill? If you're going to fight a battle, make sure it is worth the outcome that you're fighting for. So that was the best advice I received. So with that, I can't see everybody, so I'll go to Erica.
So, thanks, Greg. Erica McAlpin, she, her pronouns. I am the equity lead for the IBR program. Being from the South, you know, I could go either way here with my mother or my grandmother and their words of wisdom. I'll pick some from my mother, who told me all the time growing up to never let a fool make a fool out of you. I will pass it to Aiden.
Good evening, everyone. Aiden Gronauer, they, them, or he, him pronouns, Assistant Director of Civil Rights and Equity for the IBR program. Like Eric, I come from the South, so lots of good wisdom from down there. But one that always sticks with me is that kindness costs nothing, but means everything. And I think that's kind of helped guide my life, even in tough situations, to just lead with kindness. I will pass it to my friend, Tanya Adams.
Hello, Tanya Adams, she, her, for the IBR team. When I was young, I suffered from anxiety a lot. And my pastor said, your worst fears never come to be. And I hold on to that. Let's see. I'm going to pass it on to somebody I was just with, so, Jonelle Bell.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is staying cool. John L. Bell, Principal Equity Officer, IBR, he, him pronouns. And I think probably some of the best advice I've received was from a mentor who said, do not let other people's perception of who you are be who you are. And, you know, the notion of just charting your own path. I think I will pass it on to, let's see. Who hasn't gone is the question. Dr. Roberta Hunt, maybe I'll pass it to you.
Oh, well, so, Roberta Suzette, she, her, a facilitator. I don't know. So many things are running through my head, but I think the one that has really, that I've really thought about is since having children, really what it means to take care of myself. So that, no, it wasn't advice, but that's what I've really realized. You got to take care of yourself. And the older you get, the more you got to take care of yourself. We break down. Yeah. So how about you, Gabriella?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Gabriella Goldfarb. I'm the Environmental Public Health Section Manager at the Oregon Health Authority, and I use she, her pronouns. And echoing a few of you who've talked about mentors, a mentor of mine advised when needing to have a challenging, dealing with a challenging relationship, or especially in the kind of the public sphere, having to engage with somebody, to never blindside anybody, even if you have a profound difference, that you can let them know what you're going to do and why, and before you do it. And that's been really helpful advice in my work. And I will turn it over to Alyssa Shaw, who got the orange shirt memo. Thank you. Good, Alyssa.
Didn't intend to match, but I'm glad we do. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alyssa Shaw. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the Washington State Department of Health. And a good piece of advice that I always try to keep in mind that I've received is that it's never too late to ask for help. And that's always guided me fairly well. And I will pass along to Anna.
Hi, all. My name is Anna Caldwell. I use she, her pronouns, and I am on Alyssa's team over at Washington State Department of Health. I'm a fellow Southerner in the room, so I love to hear the accents around here, these parts. But my mom had a needlepoint up by our kitchen sink that said, be who you is, because if you be who you ain't, then you ain't who you is. And that was the first thing that popped up. And then it just made me a little homesick, but it's good advice, just to be who you are. And I have lost a little bit of track of who all is gone. John, have you gone yet?
I've not gone, thank you. John Gardner, he, him, Chief Equity Officer for TriMet. And a good piece of advice I got a long time ago from an old basketball coach was, you can have anything you want in life if you're willing to work for it. And that has proved mostly true. I too, let's see, Daryl, have you gone?
I have not gone. I'm Daryl Wendell. I'm the Deputy Program Manager for the GEC for the IBR program. And the most formative advice, but I think it was really a direction, was clean as you go. So that's changed my life, as an adult at least. Did Barbie get a chance to speak?
Yes, but Meg hasn't spoken.
Oh, Meg, okay.
Is Meg? Meg was having trouble.
Okay.
So how about Chandra?
she, her pronouns, and I will say, listen with your heart. The unexpressed needs of people is sometimes not the thing that people think about a lot, but it's the thing that matters the most when they speak.
Thank you. So I think that is everyone. I think that's everyone. I think Meg was having challenges. So let's go to Greg Johnson, our program administrator, for your update.
Well, once again, good afternoon, everyone, and almost evening. So I'm going to lead with the headline. If you read any of the news over the weekend from Friday on, you know that this program was awarded a $1.5 billion bridge improvement program grant. One of the largest grants in USDOT recent history. And it is another significant piece of the funding puzzle that this program needed. There are a lot of folks who I have thanked for their role in helping us get there. But I want to personally thank the members of the Equity Advisory Group. This has been 3.5 years of grinding away at issues, creating a equity framework, defining equity for this program. And you may think that went unnoticed, but we made a significant effort to make sure that the grant folks in Washington, D.C. knew about what the work that we're doing in the equity field. So this Equity Advisory Group is a large part of why we won that grant. They looked at this program as being unique and worthy of funding to the amount that we asked for, minus, I think, $1,000. So, but anyway, it was a great day for the program. And once again, it puts momentum at our back. But what it means is that we cannot lose focus. We have climate and equity as some of the underpinning of this entire program. So making sure that we follow through with what we said we were going to do is going to be key as we start to transition from the environmental planning and early design to the delivery of this program. So once again, a big thank you for all of those. Some of you have been here from day one. Others have joined recently, but your role is no less important. So thank you. But other things that have been going on, we have been giving out more tours. We did a tour with advisory group members. We also did a walking tour with Oregon Walks, the Street Trust, and Cycle Vancouver to have a robust conversation about active transportation on this program. We also did a walking tour with the Association of Washington Cities. So these tours are tremendously important for folks to understand the context of where this bridge sits and some of the things that we're trying to accomplish and some of the things that we can't do because of where this sits. So these tours are tremendously important. If you haven't taken a tour and you would like to, let us know. We will fit you in with either a specific EAG group, or we will fit you in with some of the other folks who have requested tours. We're still talking to the neighborhood associations. And these are conversations that are going to heat up tremendously as we are reaching towards releasing the draft supplemental document later this year. So folks are going to be very interested in the impacts to their home, to their neighborhoods, So those conversations, we continue to outreach to them, make sure they understand where we are at and how they can make their voice heard about this program. We're still doing tabling at summer events. We were at the Mississippi Street Fair in North Portland just this past Saturday, and our team talked to over 100 people who are tremendously interested in the Bridge program and want to make sure that we know that they think we're doing the right thing, and that their main conversation is, let's get this thing started and get it built. We were at Saturday in the Park for Vancouver Pride. We were at Picante. So we will continue throughout the summer and the fall to have these tabling events. If you know of other events that are going on that we may not know of, please let us know, and we will have our team there to talk about this program. We continue to do outreach with small and minority-owned business organizations. So last week, I did a presentation for the Association of Women and Minority Businesses. Myself and Barbie were there to first give the presentation and then listen to the comments and questions around this important group. And so we're trying to create a relationship to make sure that their voice can be heard in the conversations that we're having. But once again, the program is grinding very hard to get this draft supplemental out. We're hoping that we will have more details on specifics of when that will be released in the upcoming month or so. But our federal partners are very encouraged by the document that we submitted to them for review. So things are going along well. So I think that's my only slide. So let's go to the next slide. Yes, that was my last slide. So I'll take any questions or concerns that this team, that this group may have.
Maybe can we take the, thank you. So
All right.
all right. Well, thank you. It's a lot has happened.
There's a lot of good stuff. So thank you once again. And back to you, Dr. Hunt.
All right.
Oh, John has a question.
No, not a question, just a comment. I mean, I don't think everybody understands. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, I think people get it, but it's so competitive for this money. And when you understand Oregon's only 1% of the 330 million people in the United States, like we're fighting above our weight, and it's because of the team that you and everybody and John Allen, everybody's assembled, and it's incredibly impressive. So just a big thank you to you, Greg and John L and Aiden and all the IBR folks that we've come this far. We're not there, but we're so close. So it's just really exciting, and thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. We, as of right now, we have approximately $5.7 billion in our virtual bank to get this built. And we know it's going to take more than that, but that is a hell of a start. And we're looking to get an estimate out next year about this time that will define what the overall program will cost us. So great stuff. Thank you, John.
It really is a bit hard to imagine, I think. You know, it's pretty colossal. So amazing. All right. Health analysis and then it kind of makes me also think about your comment about like, don't squeeze it unless you can get the juice or something. Like,
make sure the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yes. I think you live by that for sure. So, all right. Health analysis. Chris Chris Regan.
Yeah,
Take
thank
us
you,
away.
Doctor. Thanks, Dr.
Yeah.
Hunt. Chris Regan, Environmental Manager for Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Great to be with you tonight, and want to chat a little bit about the work that we're doing to promote health within our community here, and the help that we're asking for from others who are professionals in health, including Alyssa and Anna, who will talk right after I give this brief introduction. So next slide, please. I'll just get right into it. So from the very beginning, I had some planned words, and then Administrator Johnson took a lot of those words like he does from the very beginning, like he should. Our program administrator created a vision for what the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program was going to be. And a huge part of that was to ensure that the program delivered this project through a climate and an equity lens, that we made sure that we were doing all we could to make this a better place to live. And from the very beginning, the program has been committed to analyzing impacts to human health as a result of the work that we're doing within the community. And there's a number of things that a transportation project on a major interstate can affect within the metropolitan areas of Portland and Vancouver. But it all starts from the very beginning. We seek first to avoid the harm to the environment and to human health, and to avoid that disproportionate impact to equity priority communities living adjacent to the program corridor. And so when we set up the equity framework and the climate focus, we really said, here are some areas where we're going to focus on top of the engineering standards we have of ensuring our interstate connects with communities in a way that's safe. But again, the goal here is, as we deliver this through a climate and an equity lens, we're doing everything we can to avoid harm to the environment and human health first. So the program took that and has been considering community health through several areas. Again, safety considerations and design, including interstate standards and connection, usability, how we promote active transportation and connections and avoid conflict with moving vehicles. The work that we're doing around climate, how do we reduce greenhouse gases? How do we create a more resilient infrastructure within the climate future that we're expecting? How do we promote operational and construction practices that promote a climate positive focus for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program? And then we also look at workforce planning. What can we do to ensure that we're drawing as much as possible from local sources? That we're creating that workforce at home that plans for future needs. And through those actions, we promote a healthy community along with all of the other aspects in the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. And then within the technical document itself, so within the draft supplemental environmental impact statement, which is part of the National Environmental Policy Act, there's a number of really technical things that we're doing. Oh, am I getting the key to go faster? Apologize. Nope. Okay. So we're looking, at specific, exposure to contaminated materials and sites that might have been there from, past hazardous materials problems. Looking at safety considerations for transportation facilities and operations, like I was talking about with safety shoulders and how people come on and off the freeway or on the highway, how that interacts with local streets, transit safety, active transportation safety, navigation on Columbia River and air travel above the bridge. I mean, all of those things are important elements that we are looking at from a technical aspect within the draft supplemental environmental impact statement. Okay, next slide. Yeah. But that's just part of it. So the state of Oregon and the state of Washington both have laws to promote health within communities And as we do major projects, they require that we look at health assessments. And our jurisdictional partners and community groups also expressed interest in a health impact assessment for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program so that we can better understand those potential health impacts on our local communities. And so as we've worked, as we've advanced conversations, we arrived at a very fortunate place in a partnership with the Washington State Department of Health and the Oregon Health Authority to help lead a separate third-party health analysis independent of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, so that they could take an independent look, see what we're doing, see if there's other aspects out there that might help promote a healthier community, working with the local health authorities of Clark County and Multnomah County. And we have those health professionals here today to let you know a little bit about what they're doing and how they're contributing to make the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program a more complete document as it looks at a health analysis. And so what we're doing right now is typically a health impact assessment takes a number of years, but the Department of Health and Oregon Health Authority have agreed that they are going to do their assessment, and then they will submit public comments to our draft supplemental environmental impact statement when it's published, so that the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program addresses those through the National Environmental Policy Act. The comments that are received independently will be addressed through the NEPA process, and the public will be able to see that independent review as well as our response as we move forward. And that's really about all that I wanted to do in my introduction before I invite Alyssa and Anna to talk a little bit more about the more, the larger details of what it is that they're doing. So without further ado, I will stop and I'll hand it over. I'm not sure, Alyssa, if it's you or Anna, but I'll stop there and hand it over so you can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Chris. And if you could just bear with me 1 second while I get my slides up. So good evening again, everyone. My name is Alyssa Shaw. I know I introduced myself a little bit in our icebreaker, but you'll get to know me and my coworker, Anna, here as we talk about the work that we've been doing on this health analysis. So just my formal introduction is Alyssa Shaw. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Environmental Health Assessment Team Lead at the Washington State Department of Health. Our team sits within our Built Environment section in our Office of Environmental Public Health Sciences. And so I will pass it over Anna to just do her quick intro.
Hi again, quickly, my name is Anna Caudill. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Environmental Health Evaluation Specialist on Alyssa's team at DOH.
And I can see a couple of folks on my Zoom screen here, but I don't know if I will be able to monitor the chat or see every hand raised. So please feel free to interrupt me if you have pressing questions. Just want to put that out there and just again say I really appreciate the time that your group is willing to give us to dive into this topic and talk about some of these issues tonight. So just an overview before we get into our presentation of just kind of what we are hoping for. Our presentation is not only to give you a high level overview of our health analysis and what we're working on, but we're really hoping the end of this is really a conversation between all of us. Like Chris alluded to, and like we'll mention in more detail, health impact assessments typically involve robust community engagement. That's one of the most important tenets of a health impact assessment, is to make sure that you're understanding the experiences of the folks that live in your community and the folks whose actual health is impacted. And while unfortunately we don't have the time. Our timeline was not able to accommodate the robust community engagement that is typical of health impact assessments. That's why we're not officially calling it a health impact assessment, but a health analysis. But there is just immense knowledge and experience in this room. And like we heard a little bit, you all are doing such fantastic work connecting with the community, not only professionally, but where you just sit, and your lived experiences will help us to see what the concerns are. So we're really hoping that you all can be here as representatives of your community to share with us what you've been hearing and making sure that we're not missing anything in our health analysis. And then finally, just a little primer. If the phrase built environment, I said we're in our built environment section at the Department of Health. If that's a new phrase for you all, I just want to explain what that means and what that means to public health. So just a little primer is that the built environment is really everything around us. It's everything that we have built, from our roads to our neighborhoods. It includes, how our neighborhoods are built, the laws around those neighborhoods, our access to resources, everything like that. So the built environment really impacts health in an endless number of ways. So for example, if there's a community that lives near a factory that's releasing air pollutants and putting toxics into the water system, that is something from the built environment that's impacting the health of that community. The built environment, it can also impact the choices that people have and the health choices that people can make. So for example, if the only way to get to a grocery store that has fresh food is, a 40-minute bus ride each way, that limits the health choices that a person can have based on the environment around them. So I just wanted to give that little primer before we jump into our presentation, and maybe preempt the question of, why is the health department looking at a project like a bridge replacement? So just to explain that a little bit before we get started. Oops, and I'm going through these. My apologies. So before we get into the work, I just want to say that we are here representing not just the Washington State Department of Health, but our health analysis team. So our team is a collaboration, like Chris alluded to, between not only our two states, but the counties. And I just want to first apologize that this is an older slide. And so we also, we have our partners of the Oregon Health Authority, Multnomah County Health Department, and Clark County Public Health. We also have a representative on our team from the Cowlitz tribe. And the text in the blue box should be changed, and just want to update that text and let you all know that we have offered consultation to all federally recognized tribes in all of Washington and Oregon. And so this was a slide that was from a previous presentation, so my apologies for not having that up-to-date slide. So overall, we have about 10 individuals dedicating time to this health analysis, but none of those folks, unfortunately, are not able to dedicate full time. So we really are just using our team, and are really proud that we have both states and the counties to get everyone on the same page to be looking at the health concerns that could come up with a project like this. And so I'm going to pass it to Anna to jump in and talk a little bit more about health impact assessments.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, so to start, I think Chris mentioned this, Alyssa mentioned this. The original request was that a health impact assessment be done on the IBR program by partner agencies. And so that's where we were invited to join and started our process. So a health impact assessment, or HIA, as you'll hear it abbreviated, is a process tool designed to look at a proposed project policy, plan, or program in a comprehensive manner, specifically to look at potential health and health equity impacts. HIAs are used across the world and they've been in practice for decades. HIA actually in part came out of an identified gap in the environmental impact evaluation process of NEPA, where there was kind of that really robust investigation into environmental impacts, but not necessarily a clear linking to how those environmental impacts may have influences on health outcomes. And so HIA is intended to be a supplemental resource to bring health to the table around how proposed projects could affect communities. The purpose, again, of an HIA is to provide health and health equity information specifically to decision makers as well as the public to understand how the proposed project may have positive, negative, or neutral impacts on health and health equity. They are evidence-based, which means they use a combination of qualitative and quantitative data, which can come from a variety of sources used to inform the assessment. And on the right-hand side of the screen are the 6 standard steps of a health impact assessment. Those are agreed upon steps that each HIA goes through. The first step being screening, followed by scoping, assessment, recommendations, reporting, and monitoring and evaluation. So on the next slide, we, like Alyssa mentioned, our working group began meeting in January of this year and started with the first step of HIA, which is screening. And the main purpose of screening is to determine if an HIA is the right tool to use with the time, resources, project under consideration, and decision-making landscape in front of you. So it asks you also to reflect on if a health impact assessment would be a value add to the project that you're potentially analyzing. So answering a question that may not be otherwise answered. So there is a national organization in the United States called, with international partners actually, called Society of Practitioners of Health Impact Assessment. And they publish standards of practice guide for health impact assessment that's updated regularly. So we used their standards of practice to inform our implementation of a health impact assessment as well. And SOPHIA, as it's called as an acronym, is a national organization of health impact assessment professionals and practitioners that put resources together, provide training and technical assistance for HIAs around the world and in the United States. So going through that first step, the screening process, we identified that a comprehensive HIA would not be feasible in the timeline available to inform decision makers specifically around this IBR program. And part of the reason why we determined a full HIA would not be the best approach came down to timing as well as resources. Like Chris mentioned, a comprehensive HIA of a project of this scale would take around 2 years to complete. And like Alyssa mentioned, it would ideally involve robust community engagement at each step of the process, as well as significant resources. Our working group agreed that an HIA would still be very valuable and that the opportunity to collaborate on a project of this scale and a project that's really a once in a lifetime, once in a generation project to the region was too good to pass up on, as well as we agreed that we still needed to provide, to bring health to the table in the way that we could. So given the time and resources available, we agreed on a modified health analysis, but it really does follow the same standards, practices, and steps of a health impact assessment. And just for context, we are currently in the assessment and recommendations phases of the process. And like Chris mentioned, the plan is to submit the health analysis as a public comment to the draft supplemental environmental impact statement when it is released later this year. And I'll pass it back to Alyssa.
Thank you, Anna. So these are the identified topic areas that came out of the second step of the HIA process that's called scoping. And really, it's just a big brainstorm to look at based on the type of project that you're looking at. What are the different health outcomes that could be related? And so we went through and had a number of conversations on all of the different health outcomes that we could think of related to a project of this type. And these are the 6 that we identified. And so we're looking at air quality, transportation and active transportation, climate and heat, noise, social determinants of health, and water quality. And we are connecting those topic areas. For each of the topic areas, we are using a phrase that is common in public health world, but not in the general population, really called health pathways. So what that really means is, for example, for air quality, when you think of air quality, we're really wanting to make sure that that is connected to very specific health outcomes that could impact the community. So for example, poor air quality leads to increased cardiovascular and respiratory illness. So we're taking these topic areas and connecting those to the specific health concerns that we as public health would care about. Same thing for something like climate and heat. We are looking at the like heat related illness, things like that. So within each of those topic areas, we are doing a number of things, trying to connect not just the literature of what does the literature, scientific literature say about this health pathway, as it's called. So what does the literature say about air quality and cardiovascular disease? But then we're also connecting that to what we're calling baseline local health conditions. So that's where our partnerships with Clark County and Multnomah County are really coming in. Absolutely wonderful having that partnership is that they're able to look at the local data. So let's continue with our cardiovascular disease example. And they're able to work together, and they are comparing their local health data so that we can get a really good sense of not just the project area, but more of the region and what is the health condition for this region. So we're analyzing data sources such as, like I said, the local health data, but we're also including things like census data, the American Community Survey, the Environmental Justice Screen tool, and CDC Places, for example, of a couple of our data sources. And then in our conversations about the health impacts, it came up that some of the health impacts could be more acute during specific times of this project. And so we started to break the health impacts also down by these 3 categories you see in the bottom left-hand corner that we're identifying as design, construction, and the project lifetime. And then finally, we, in these conversations about what health concerns we wanted to take a look at, the idea came up that we wanted to perhaps have equity and environmental justice be their own sections because they were so important. Like Anna said, health equity is really one of the main things that health impact assessments look at generally. But as we were going through and really identifying what that would look like, we couldn't separate the equity and environmental justice concerns that came up in each of the sections. And so rather than having those be their own section, we're keeping equity and environmental justice related to all of these topic areas. What that really means when we are talking about equity in the public health world is we're really looking at health disparities. And so we know that health disparities come from a number of societal and historical contexts, but we're really trying to look at what are the health disparities that are connected to these health topics that we are identifying. So for just a small example, one example of a health disparity could relate related to infrastructure projects could be regarding tree canopy. So analysis and literature shows that, highways and roadways with large expanses of concrete are typically seen in greater numbers through communities of color. And that lack of tree canopy and large expanses of concrete and impervious materials can lead to higher heat indexes in communities, which can exacerbate health outcomes. So that lack of tree canopy can impact a community when we're having a heat wave, such as we've been experiencing the last week or so, that may not be hitting another community, typically wealthier, more suburban white communities that have maintained their tree canopy. So that's one example of the kinds of health disparities that we're looking at connected to these health outcomes in our topic areas. And the next part of our presentation really transitions to our questions for you all and where we would want to have some more of a conversation. But I want to stop here before we get to that discussion and just see if there's any questions that the group has for us about what we just covered. Again, just our high level overview of our health analysis.
Sometimes I think asking people to give a question from so much work is sometimes hard. Nikki's going to give it a go. And Barbie's ready. Okay, good. All right, Nikki.
Hi. So once again, Nikki Chen. I'm from the City of Vancouver, Office of Equity and Inclusion. And I also spent 18 years working in healthcare. So this is like a combination of my life. A quick question of, you gave a great example of tree canopies, but what would be an example of what you'd be looking for specifically along with the bridge? Is there a correlation question that you would have with that to show as an example of what you'd be looking for?
Frankly, that is one example that when you're looking at infrastructure projects, that could be something that is integrated, maintaining tree canopy and green vegetation along roadways and things like that can mitigate those poor health outcomes. So that is something, and as a small example of something that we are looking at. Did you want a more specific example in any of the other topic areas?
If you have any available, I was just curious the correlation that you were going to bring forth.
I'll be honest, it's kind of like weaving a web. Us in public health, it's maybe a little more intuitive for us to see how all of these different pieces are connected. So another example, like I was saying, of that health pathway is with air quality, is just looking at just general emissions and air quality and connecting that to cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease. So really taking, and we're going to try to figure out how to put this into more of a narrative form into the report to connect some of those pieces from the built environment and really show how each of the steps gets you to that end health outcome. Another piece that we didn't really talk about too much in here is another phrase that is common in public health, but we call it cumulative health impacts. And so another piece that we're keeping in mind is how we can tie all of these topic areas together. And so let's say a community has, for whatever reason, the poor air quality that we were talking about, and also has that low tree canopy. What does that do in collaboration with each other? How do those layers pile on each other to really shape the experience that someone is having living in that area? Because typically it's not just, especially when you're talking about health disparities, it's usually not just one health disparity that you see, it kind of layers on top of each other. And so when you're looking at just one metric, it can be hard to really see the full picture of what folks are experiencing. So we're going to do our best to lay out that kind of complex topic in a narrative form.
Thank you. That's exactly why I was asking. And if we could also throw in there somehow the mental health around getting to and from and the anxiety that can sometimes cause if it's too complex or not clearly stated and different things like that. I think that's forgotten sometimes. So I would love if that could be considered as part of your process. That would be really great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I do see Gabriella's hand up. So Gabriella, please, if you want to chime in and add anything else from our team.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that's a great question. And looking at the recommendations that we're going to make on design, construction, and project lifetime, with the time available, a lot of what we're doing is just flagging that for this very complex project, that there's a lot to learn. And the main, research and writing team, as Alyssa was saying, this is something that is so important that people have integrated into, work plans where there wasn't room for this big project. So we are wanting to do our best to bring these concepts of, hey, there's a connection between this and this kind of health outcome. And to understand, there should be consciousness as the design process goes forward, as the construction happens, and over the course of the lifetime of the project, consider these questions. And our hope is that we will be building this into our work over the longer term. And this is just a beginning foundation, given the amount of time and resources we have right now. And we've had a great collaboration with the IBR project, but it's a huge sprawling project. They have a lot on their plate. And so, we've started a little bit later in the development of all this, but our hope is that we're raising the flag. And I think with our comments, hopefully are going to bring some information that might be helpful to community and to point at and say, oh yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know about that connection. Yes, let's make sure as things go forward that we pay attention to all these things. So and so we're hoping, this is public comment to the IBR, but we would appreciate, and that's part of the benefits of engaging with you all, that there's visibility. You all help with visibility for the community and can amplify these flags, so that with the ongoing engagement, it starts to get built into the processes going forward.
Thank you, Gabriella. And I see Sabrina, you have your hand up.
Well, I just want to, with the stack, Barbie had her hand.
I'm so sorry. That is just the one I see on the side. So Barbie, please go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Facilitating. So you have somebody who can do this tonight. So
thank you.
No worries at all. Again, I'm Barbie Alexander, DVE and Workforce IBR. And you answered my question around cumulative effects, but really teasing out those layered, complex health conditions like asthma and how tree canopy, impervious surfaces increase that heat and climate, but also reduce air quality. Are there exacerbations during certain times? And so I'm really interested in the data. So thank you you did answer my question, but I think it would be helpful to make really strong connections for people, because that's the thing that catches them and they begin to thinking on those secondary, tertiary, and quaternary levels. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we are working on not only gathering and analyzing that data, but we are currently working with our communications team and our health educators at the Department of Health of how we can make this not just a scientific technical report, which, we will have all of our methods and data for those of us who want that. But at the end of the day, good public health is to make sure that this is available and usable to the community. And so we're already having those conversations of how we're going to synthesize our data in a way that's useful and helpful to people to understand. So we'll keep you posted on all of that as well. And I see another hand up, but I don't know if it's the right one.
Sabrina and then Aiden.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Sabrina Owens-Wilson with Metro. I wanted to see if you could say a little bit more about the kind of demographic or populations that the equity assessment will focus on. We have, as a part of the equity framework, we have a list of populations that this committee identified when we say equity. And so I'm curious if you all are using that list of populations or a different one for the equity component of this work.
Yes, thank you for the question. So we do have your definition and the, I believe you call them equity zones. Priority zones. Thank you.
Priority communities.
Yes, so we do have access to that information as well. And so the, like I said, we're still in the data analysis phase. And so what we're hoping to do is to kind of have an overlay of looking at that identified community and then looking at the health data and to see where those areas really overlap. So we can, again, what we're trying to get down to is like, what is the lived experience of the people on the ground? And so what are all of the different things that we need to keep in mind? So we're not just looking at the local and the national. Again, we're referring to a lot of census tract data, and we're trying to use as many data sources as possible, understanding, there's limitations to all data. And so we're trying to kind of put them all together so we get the most accurate picture of what's happening. And again, the intention in our report is that we will lay out all of the data sources, how we are defining, all of these terms, because sometimes I think terms get thrown around without being properly defined. So we're wanting to make sure that in regards to our report, when we say equity, we mean X, Y, Z, here's how we put that together. So we're trying to be as mindful of that as we can.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Aiden?
Thank you so much, Aiden Gronauer, they, them, Interstate Bridge Program. I'm very curious about, I understand that you're looking at the entire 5-mile corridor, not just the main bridge itself. So I'm curious for the active transportation piece, if you were like mapping out where there would maybe be increases in air quality concerns or heat concerns, noise concerns. I'm thinking about folks that bike and walk or will be biking and walking across, between the two cities. And it's already pretty loud and hot now if you're right next to the roadway. So I'm curious if you kind of map that out in your assessment to see if there's any mitigations we can do as a program to help make that active transportation experience more enjoyable and not have any negative health impacts.
Yes, that is the hope. And so I think this is where the different project timelines really come into play, because as we're having these conversations, for something like, the experience of an active transportation user, that might have fallen into, okay, well, that's actually the project lifetime, but how do we mitigate the health impacts that someone will have during that experience? It's actually in the design phase. And if you can design an active transportation system that makes sure that users are protected from the heat, for your example, that gets to positive health impacts by the end of the project lifetime. So we've been trying to kind of do that dance with our topics and recommendations to really get to the heart of what a health impact assessment is, which is to get as far upstream as possible to make positive health decisions upstream so that you don't have poor health outcomes and disparities downstream. So yes, we are thinking of all of that and hope to have some recommendations recommendations look a number of different ways, but it can be, we could be recommending mitigation, it could be recommending further study, things like that. So I hope that answers your question.
And Dr. Hunt, I have a question. I can't find the raise hand feature. You think after all these years I could find it?
Go for it.
And so my question, so thank you for this presentation. I think this is a really terrific, and appreciate your spending time with the EAG. Just wanted to highlight some of the work that's coming out of the Community Benefits Advisory Group process, and wanting to make sure that your team also has an opportunity of looking at some of the recommendations as well as some of the commentary coming out of that group, which could in some instances be considered through the lens of mitigations and or design considerations relative to the program writ large, that both gets at sort of the equity as well as some health pieces. So just sort of wanted to highlight that.
Yes, thank you so much. We have been able to review the Community Benefits Advisory Group recommendations, and they may not have been thinking about them from a health perspective, but they actually, a lot of them overlap with the work that we're doing. And I'm sure similarly, you've all had conversations that overlap with some of these topics that we're thinking of as well. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention, we are on the agenda. We're hoping to give the same presentation to the other advisory groups and be soliciting their feedback as well. So you all are just the first one, but we are on the agenda for both the Community Benefits Advisory Group and Community Advisory Group.
Great, thank you. That's really appreciated. And I guess the last thing I'll just say is I'm sure this is part of the context of your report, but we're always sort of challenged with, obviously there's going to be limited amount of resources, limited dollars. And the great thing about kind of the work that you're doing is you can kind of be divorced from those political realities to some degree. But to the degree there are either best practices or emerging practices that you're seeing in other mega projects similar to IBR, where perhaps elements like your recommendations have been considered, have even potentially been funded by various funding sources. I think that's going to be super helpful so that, to the degree the program leadership and the program move forward with some of your recommendations, we can figure out how do we actually operationalize them and frankly pay for them. That's probably more of an editorial comment than needing your response. But that's a wish. I mean, part of it is we can have all of the great recommendations, but ultimately it's going to come down to what can we realistically afford and move forward with. I would like for us to be in a position, to Greg's point earlier, how do we actually make good on many of the commitments that this group in particular have spent 3 years on, as well as so many of our advisory groups.
Yes, well, all I will say with that is just really getting back to the intention of a health impact assessment, which is to provide health-focused, equity-focused, and evidence-based information to decision makers. And while decision makers may want to fund some things, this could give some just extra context to why they should make, XYZ decision. And so, I think that is the benefit of us being an independent group, is that we are here solely to provide the evidence and the recommendations, but it is with the intention that decision makers have all the information that they need to make positive health choices for their communities.
So I know you have some questions already, but I also want to, we've had a lot of spaces where we've been talking and not seeing each other. So maybe we can have the questions up for a little bit and then let's take them down. Well, we need them now because we have our questions. We have questions to ask.
We can
But,
also put them in the chat. If
do we have a chat?
Oh,
Because I don't think we do.
Well, that changes that plan.
But,
Yes,
you know,
I can put the question up, give folks a chance to really absorb it, and then come out of presentation mode.
Okay, great.
And so, again, we have a couple of questions to guide our conversation tonight, but the crux of what we're wanting to hear from you all is just when you hear of a health analysis like this, what health concerns have you heard of from your community? What are the things that you can't go and talk to people about this project without hearing about? And so these are the first two questions we have of just what health concerns have you heard from the community in regards to this project? And based on your experience and lived experience, any health concerns that you have related to this project? And then once we feel comfortable with those questions, we can, we have two more to close us out.
Hi, Meg Johnson, she, her pronouns. Of course, I have thoughts. For the first question, noise, more than anything, is the thing that I hear about for not only during the construction phase, during tear down, but noise all around, both from people who are actively transporting, who are crossing the bridge by foot, by bike, any wheels, and then in a car. Like even now, like people are like, well, is it going to be better than the bridge that we have? That would be great. And then for the second question, I think beyond just noise, I think there's a piece that I don't know if we really talked about yet, which is our time scale and our understanding that, like, for example, the health of the river, it's eternal potentially, right? It's not 100 years. It's a much longer time scale than that. So we have to consider that, while the current bridge has been there for over 100 years, we have to have a bigger time scale when we're thinking about health impacts, literally downstream and upstream, right? So I think at least river health, water quality, water health is very important from what I've heard in the community as well.
Greg.
So one of the things that we often hear about freeways in urban areas are the instances of asthma that occur along corridors like this. And so we are in a situation where we already have a overcrowded corridor with 7.5 to 10 hours of congestion every day. It has more than the normal share of trucks that go through this corridor. So the one thing that we are looking at that has created controversy is that we are trying to solve and make traffic flow better so we don't have fuel being burnt inefficiently, sitting in these backups and trying to keep traffic moving, not at 70 miles an hour, but at, between 35 and 50 miles an hour where fuel is being burned efficiently. But, some folks saying by solving congestion, then you are inducing more traffic to use the roadway. So I guess it's more of a comment that we're between a rock and a hard place as we try and solve one problem and folks think that we are creating another problem. but would love to hear your take on issues like that.
Maybe I can jump in. You know, many of you all are the transportation experts, all right? And so we can flag the issue that you are raising, Greg, and say, and I'm sorry, Gabriella, my name. We can flag those issues to make sure, please make sure that you are not, you know, resulting in that kind of a trade-off. And this needs to be studied, but we can't bring that expertise to regarding induced demand versus you know, more efficient, you know, passage of vehicles. But that's exactly the kind of questions that we you know, will pose. And you know, to the conversation earlier about the layers, you know, another one, for example, layering climate, and we're talking about wildfire smoke. So those particulates on top of emissions, and what does that modeling look like? We're not going to be able to model that, but we will flag that that will be an important thing to consider, for example. Alyssa and Anna, tell me if you agree with that, or you're the ones who have the main pen on the HIA, health impact assessment expertise.
Yes, that is absolutely right. And I wish I could say that our analysis solved that problem, but I don't know if we have that magic wand.
Vicky and then Barbie.
Oh. Well, historically, because the populations of people of color are relatively small in Oregon, it has created historical problems of data collection, because the numbers, if you use telephone surveys or you use internet, something internet connected on a Indian reservation, 60% of Warm Springs has no internet connection. So it would be important to try to identify those barriers that keep that are barriers for data being collected accurately. I know that over the past, Asians have been underrepresented in a lot of the data connection, because the random number of times somebody Asian's going to get connected and actually responds or participates is small. So it's important, and I don't think we've had a real good way of identifying that. So just to keep that in mind.
Yes, and thank you. Part of our methods section where we talk about our data is going to be just a frank limitations section. I think it would be silly for us to not identify every data set has limitations. And so we're really hoping to just have full transparency on here's the data we have, here's what we're able to glean from that data, but no data set is perfect, and try to just lay that out, because you're right, we don't, and there's no way to have all of the information about everything all of the time, but we're gonna try to put together all of the data sources we have to reflect the most accurate picture we can.
Thank you. And actually, that's part of my question, was around healthcare utilization data. And maybe just a suggestion, looking at, for example, Los Angeles County recently completed a massive infrastructure project, and they have great Medicare and state Medicaid healthcare utilization data, both pre-construction, during construction, and after. And there's at least an established window of greater than 5 years in terms of looking at, let's just use example of asthma attacks in minority populations within the zip codes around And you could look at that. You could look at emergency room utilization. You could look at, there's a lot of things, and look at that and maybe be able to speak to that question around accommodation, because we know that traffic has improved there and they used to have horrendous traffic jams. And that really speaks to Greg's question around, if we're accommodating now, we're not getting those, I'm sitting here for 45 minutes. And what does that look like on the impact and utilization in those communities? And that just might be one place to look.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely look into that example from LA. That sounds really like a great guide that could give us some good insight.
Should we also go, I think you have some more questions as well.
I do. So just our last couple. So any recommendations for, you heard that our intention of having our list of recommendations coupled with our data that we'll submit as our public comment, but are there any recommendations for the IBR program that you would like to see based on those community health concerns? And then probably our most important question is there anything missing from our list or anything that you would expect to be covered in a health analysis that you have not seen yet? I'll give just another minute to read these questions and absorb it, and then I'll stop sharing. And
Greg,
I see hands up already.
Yeah, Greg and then Nikki.
So my question is more towards the long term. Part of the partner conditions that we had, one of them was to perform a health impact assessment. But another is to keep a long-term monitoring of health in the corridor to see, okay, have we done good things? Have we exacerbated the situation? And IBR program is just a creation of the two DOTs. Once this project is done, we go away. And I think it's important that the community does understand, are we continuing the harm? Are we doing better? And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we assure that, 15 years from now, someone has looked at the impacts of this and says, yeah, this is what a mega project should be doing. Or, my God, they're making the situation even worse. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on how future monitoring of impacts, and I know you guys have full-time day jobs. So are there any examples where you guys have done a study and then gone back years later to assess whether the project was successful in changing health outcomes?
So our team has not done that, but I will say we are just a new team. But the last step of the health impact assessment, those 6 steps, step number 6 is monitoring and evaluation. And unfortunately, in most of the health impact assessments you see in the US and around the world is most people skip that step because usually these projects are hard enough to get the health impact assessment done already. They're typically project-based, maybe they have grant funding. And so what we've heard from practitioners is it's really a resource issue. And as much as people would love to, that is the step that gets dropped off. You make the report, decisions get made, and then people move on. And so we do see that as a huge gap that we would love our team to fill. There's a couple of different things that you could look at with a health impact assessment. Of course, you're looking at were our assumptions correct? Were the health impacts that we projected actually the ones that came to fruition. I think for us as public health practitioners, that's the most important. But another thing that some folks monitor and evaluate is how did the health impact assessment process actually influence decision making, if at all? So you can kind of see it both in the process evaluation and then the health outcome evaluation. And so I think that is also a difficulty because those two questions might be asked by different groups of people. That one person might want to know how it benefited the process, and the other looking at what are the actual long-term impacts on the community. Oh, and I'm sorry, I am at the library that's about to close and the light just got turned off on me. So I'm going to switch to my phone and please, my apologies, but Anna I'm going to be listening and I will be able to speak, but I'm getting kicked out of the library.
So, a quick thought or for a follow-up, and maybe this goes through the community advisory group, is to have the community advisory group set up a community benefits advisory group, set up a benefit as the program is wrapping up the final years of construction, that dollars be set aside for a revisit of the health impact assessment. So Vicki, John L., other folks who are on the community benefits advisory group, that may be something that we can put on the table kind of as a follow-up. I don't know how much this assessment cost, but take this as a base and then inflate it out to 10 to 15 years and have that amount set aside to revisit this issue in the future to see, okay, what have we done? Are we successful? Because if it's not funded, if it's not committed to, it won't get done.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Greg. Sort of a pre and post. The other thing for the health impact team, if you've not had a chance to take a look at EAG's recommended key performance indicators, there were a number of indicators directly tied to health impact, and it would be helpful to have your review of that because, again, part of the assessment could be the eventual KPIs that get approved relative to this particular topic, which again ties back to the equity framework.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for raising the key performance indicators specifically. We have looked at the equity framework and it's been nice to see some overlap with shared goals and things. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out specifically. And I agree with you, Greg. It comes up a lot in health impact assessment that you can have recommendations, but perhaps if you don't recommend that there's funding for those recommendations, whether or not they come through in reality can be a challenge. So thank you for that that comment.
All right, have we gone through the bulk of your questions?
Those were our questions. The final ones were any recommendations and anything missing from our list of topic areas. So if there are any final thoughts, we welcome them.
Would it be helpful to put the topic areas up for a minute just to refresh people's?
I can do that. Although I don't want to blind you while I scroll through these slides too fast.
While Anna's doing that, I thought I would just give you a little bit of context for in Washington and Oregon, the capacity around health impact assessments, as Alyssa and I can't remember now, we're saying they are resourced by the legislature in Washington state to have a explicit health impacts assessment program. In Oregon, that's not the case. We used to have one that was funded through a federal grant, and then the CDC ended their program. And so that ended our formal program. So we still are a source of technical assistance for folks who do want to do those types of things. And we have helped Metro and other regional governments in the state. But it is an area of particularly constrained capacity. And so I want to really actually lift up Washington's Department of Health, which is taking the lead because they do have a team, and OHA in this case is providing review and policy support, but really a lot of kudos to Washington Department of Health and fantastic folks at Multnomah County Public Health and Clark County Public Health, who are really doing the roll up the sleeves work on this.
Thanks, Gabriella. Yes, and just a reminder of our topic areas. We have air quality, transportation and active transportation, climate and heat, noise, social determinants of health, and water quality.
And thank you, Gabriella and Anna. I am back. I'm just going to stay off camera.
Okay. Hearing some silence, I can go ahead and get us back to see each other's faces.
Yeah.
And Anna, not to disrupt the silence, but I just wanted to add that I think I love the social determinants of health, and I love that you gave the primer on the built environment. I think that's incredibly important around context, but I would also really like to uplift Nikki's comment around the impacts on mental health. And I would only suggest that if folks don't necessarily aren't well versed in the social determinants of health, having that opportunity to see it broken out and how there are so many layers and how they are intertwined is incredibly important. So might want to think about that in terms of the presentation, because it left me feeling like, and I know all the bits and pieces, but I can imagine if I was like, well, what does that mean? So just as a way to flesh out and really get some more connection. Thank you. I just think this is a great presentation.
Well, thank you for that comment. And I agree, I was about to explain or provide an example of a social determinant of health. So totally thank you for that comment. And it's always good to remember when we can get a little jargony, definitely in all spaces, but public health for sure.
So please do. I would like to hear your definition.
Well, I don't want to claim any sort of Anna's definition of social determinants of health, but there's a lot in life, in social settings that affect your health outcomes. So specific things often looked at are income and education levels, as well as considering upstream factors that influence how people come to have the income that they do or come to have a level of education that they do. I do feel like income and education are often prominent social determinants of health because they are also linked in terms of educational attainment and levels of income. Those are two that stand out to me. I saw Gabriella hop off of mute if she wants to chime in as well.
Yeah, I will say per OHA, we include healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and built environment. So, are there sidewalks? Are there parks? Are there grocery stores? Are there too many liquor stores? That type of thing. Economic stability, language barriers, and then something broadly, the social and community context. Is there linguistic isolation, for example? Things like that.
So those are great examples, and the team has been noodling on some of those things that we can impact. For instance, our program is translated into, I think, 11 written languages and 8 spoken languages, or I may have that backwards. We also are looking at pre-apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship programs to try and change trajectories of folks who traditionally haven't had opportunities to work on these great paying jobs on a project like this that will last for 10 years. So I'm glad to hear you put that as part of your analysis, because it is something that I will give credit where it's due, that John L. Put that on the table early on in our discussions about this program being able to take people from poverty to prosperity. And so that tries to get at that income disparity issue that is a health determinant. So it's good stuff.
One other piece I was going to request, to the degree that there are resources or other pieces of fodder we can share with the AG, and frankly others within our team, to kind of up our skill sets around kind of social determinants of health, as well as health impacts, that would be helpful. I recall at one point, I think it was Multnomah County, might have been a few other health authorities, really pushing unnatural causes, which was just a terrific documentary, I think, put out by PBS, looking at social determinants. In a lot of senses, they're probably more updated material now, but if folks haven't seen Unnatural Causes, it's a really great documentary that kind of brings this, brings race and inequities front and center, and the whole notion of needing to be further upstream to really deal with inequities we see downstream.
Janelle, unfortunately, that is still the best one out there. And unfortunately, all the things they said then are still, that's 15 years ago, still true. So a really big endorsement of your lifting that up. It's really important. Has stood the test of time.
Another thing I would add to that conversation is some of the things we've been looking at in the Community Benefits Advisory Group are that we know there's some food deserts out there, especially on Hayden Island and other areas. And so, we know that one of the social determinants of health is access to healthy, affordable food. So if we can look at how these tie together with some of our other groups that are working on that to get the funding to make these things happen, that would be great.
Again, I want to be candid on what we are capable of delivering at this time, because just as we laid out, some of those social determinants of health, we will be flagging where we see, like where there's evidence from public health research of connections to those things, but with the time that we have available, we won't be able to do that exact analysis to get to that level of granularity. So we want to be honest with you of what we can do, and I think we hope that what the value is that we are bringing independently that evidence base for why these things need to be looked at, and that will be something that community can have some confidence in, and again, build on that to take the specific actions to address those flags.
Yes, we've been balancing seeing the connection with everything, but also then making sure that we're not having too much scope creep, and really trying to stay on track and do the most effective work that we can in the time. This is why these health impact assessments would typically take 2 years, because once you start peeling away the layers, there's just more and more work to be done, more and more connections to be made. But that being said, I just appreciate you all bringing all of these things up. So that's not a comment to quash this conversation at all. I think it's important. The more we talk about these connections, the more it really sinks in of, again, how this impacts people every day, and really helping us understand their lived experience.
Nikki?
I wanted to share that
actually, I feel like this is probably one of the core questions that a lot of community is going to be asking, is how it's affecting their health. So I feel like this has way more impact than I think is being presented today. I feel like it's being like simplified, and I'm like, no, this is major. And I think it warrants, in my personal opinion, the possibility of looking for a grant or, contacting someone within the climate control area that would maybe sponsor a part-time person that can dedicate themselves, because you guys made it very aware that your team may not be able to. But if that's a possible consideration, I would absolutely support that, especially because this individual could help create a project outline for that long-term plan, and for someone to come back and reestablish later, and they can just devote themselves to answering these questions.
Yes, any information that you have and are able to share, we would love to hear about those options. And that just makes me think, and I will put out as well, just back to our conversation about the monitoring and evaluation, is that I'm seeing just an immense opportunity to utilize this group and the advisory groups generally, because we have not created that plan at this point. And so I think that could be a good opportunity to think more strategically about how everyone can work together, especially once we're able to share the full report. Based on this information, what would we want to monitor? What would we want to evaluate? How would we want to continue this going forward? So I just appreciate you being willing to potentially talk with us about that.
Barbie?
You may have already gone down this road, but this may be an opportunity for the Portland State Masters of Public Health program. This is a great opportunity for students to learn. There are not a lot of opportunities for students to get it even scaled down analysis from an assessment. So having that opportunity, also the Bachelor's of Nursing program at OHSU, and a senior or the master's capstone in terms of utilization data and how that tracks. So I think that there are great opportunities for people to have an opportunity and to really capture a lot of really great data through that. Learning opportunities. I think that would be great.
Yes, we have kicked that idea around. And again, we're working with some time constraints, and then with the school year not aligning with the main chunk of work, we weren't able to have that work out. But if this is a project that we're able to commit long-term resources to, absolutely, students and not just a specific researcher, one person potentially working on, a higher level, but there's also a class at the UW that's specifically about health impact assessments. So I think there's a lot of places where this could benefit from academic support, not just on our side, but then of course having students learn and get that opportunity to engage on such a big project.
I like that a lot. I like the opportunity of it. So I recognize it's 7:13, and for the good of the order, it's good to move to public comment. Thank you so much for coming and sharing such a breadth of knowledge. And thank you everyone for your insightful thinking. So public comment. Comment instructions through Zoom. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR EAG meeting webpage. Commentators will be allowed to turn on their webcams, but will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. By phone, dial 253-215-8782, meeting ID 986-0940-5983, passcode 701376. Dial *9 to raise your hand, dial *6 to unmute yourself. The facilitator will call on participants to provide comment. Please provide your name and affiliation. Commentators will be given 2 minutes to speak.
We don't have anyone in the waiting room.
All right. Comment instructions: to submit comment after the meeting, fill out the comment form on the program website, or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with EAG Public Comment in the subject line. Call 888-503-6735 and state EAG Public Comment in your message. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. So, do we have people for public comment?
We do not have anyone, no.
All right, so let's have our poll for meeting evaluation. Thank you. And our next meeting is August 19th from 5:30 to 7:30. Can we take slides down? And to close, our three takeaways from today. Anyone can offer one. Greg. Oh, Greg, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
You think I would have learned that trick 3.5 years ago? I'm tremendously impressed with the conversation and the work that's being done on this health impact assessment. So I look forward to seeing how you guys frame this and how we can learn from it and make our design better, make the overall program better. So good stuff. Thank you.
2 more. Vicky.
Well, it runs through my mind about minimizing harm, when we've prioritized the issues that we want to put into our planning. We talk a lot about minimizing harm or reducing harm. So often we associate that with it costing more money, but it doesn't have to cost more money. Some of these are systematic changes, like we could do a better job of collecting data at the Oregon Health Authority or public health, because that should be done already. And so hopefully our work, what Greg's saying down the line, we'll be able to look back and say, these are things we wanted to improve on, even if it's just because of our advocacy and not because of even money necessarily.
Thank you. One more. I think I just appreciate the lifting up of environmental justice concerns and thinking about how this is really going to play out in people's lived lives. So it's a lot to think about, and I appreciate how complexly you are approaching the work. And I do think you need a bigger team. And you know, I love students. And students want to do work that is meaningful and has real impact now, as opposed to an exercise. So it's really valuable to think about how students can participate in that. And I think you also need more people dedicated to this as well. Erica.
So Dr. Hunt, as a former educator myself, I will say I love students as well. And I think it's a great opportunity to share that the IBR program has a fantastic internship program going on right now. And maybe that's something that we can come back and share with the EAG about.
Yeah, great. So Vicki, I think your hand is still up, but I think you're complete. Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. And so thank you, everyone. You are delightful and insightful. Enjoy your week. And yeah, wear your sunscreen and drink water.
Thank you all so much for having us and for all of your insight and feedback. I just can't say how much we appreciate you all giving us so much of your time. This has been really meaningful. So thank you.
Awesome. Ciao, everyone. See you in
Thank
August.
you.
Have a great evening.